Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear me speak about my journey here at the Center for Academic Innovation as a Partnership Development Student Fellow. To quickly introduce myself, I'm Priydarshini Gouthi. I'm a senior pursuing a dual degree in business and psychology. And although graduation is less than a month away, I look forward to the next chapter. I joined CAI at the end of September 2021, so practically October, in the partnership development team, and then have had an amazing experience. I have had the opportunity to learn so much from not only the PDEV team, but others at CAI, and gain so much more knowledge into the world of education and the online learning space, which is really marking the start of a knowledge revolution. Before going into the specifics of what I worked on, I thought it would be good to just review the partnership development goals in terms of the internal and external partnerships under which my specific goals were housed. So internally, a key theme was the fall 2021 call for proposals, in which many of you participated. And with that came furthering partnerships with specific schools, and that also required industry research in order to be able to direct our initiatives with specific schools and to identify the most relevant needs. From an external perspective, of course, the idea was to continue building partnerships with various organizations, but also work towards formalizing and standardizing the processes through identifying and planning out the different organizational cohort structures and models that exist. Industry research also played a critical role in this because no matter whether you look at internal or external partnerships, it was important to just gain a general in-depth awareness of what is going on in the market, of where the market is heading, what's the demand and what's the supply, in terms of if I were to put it in like economical terms. Starting with the call for proposals, which took up a large part of my time as a fellow in the fall semester, the theme was to address global challenges in an interconnected world. For those of you who are asking why this theme and why now, as we emerge out of the pandemic, which has undeniably changed the way we live, the way we interact, and the way we work, we have realized that there have been needs that have been highlighted and become more prominent in terms of learning gaps and skills that learners are looking for. And hence, this theme was really to acknowledge that yes, the world is evolving and has evolved at an unimaginable pace over the past 2 years when it comes to social, technological, and cultural contexts. And hence, there's an also need for us to change the way we learn and what we learn. In terms of the CFP strategic goals last semester, a large part of it was diversification of content, of audiences, and with content, of course, the collaborators. Like with any other initiative, it is also important for the initiative to be sustainable. So it was looking for opportunities that are going to generate revenue, but also be viable from both an innovation perspective, where we get to play and experiment with different delivery systems and integrations, but it's also something that can be sustained into the future and that aligns well with the larger portfolio strategy, given how key coherency and consistency is. Now, coming specifically to my work, I believe it can be categorized into three main buckets. The first being logistics, which was scheduling appointments. I'm sure a lot of you received calendar invites from me. When it comes to running a call for proposal or any rather long-term process, it's important for us to be able to make sure that the different moving pieces fit well together. And so that's what logistics was really about, saying how do we maintain a tracker? How do we make sure that we're most efficient in our approach to this call? And so a lot of the work that I did was curating contact lists, for making sure that the documents that were needed were up to date, were created, were sent out, that everyone was on the same page. The next part of it, the call, since diversification was such a key goal, was the outreach and marketing. And this, I really enjoyed this part because I learned how to create decks and market materials for a very different audience from those that I've worked with previously, and to identify what would resonate most with a certain type of audience was just a very insightful journey. And the next part of my work was future preparation. So when we talk about this year's student showcase theme, a year of transformation, I look at transformation as understanding what have we done well so far, what needs to be improved, using those insights to then position ourselves to succeed in the future. And that's what really future preparation was about. The CFP and running the CFP gave us a lot of data points, both qualitative and quantitative. And the idea was, how do we summarize and boil it down to the key priorities, so that if someone new had to run a call for proposal by themselves, they could look at just a visual representation and like the handbook to know what to do. And that's where the feedback survey also played a huge role, because as a team, it allowed us to identify what needs to be improved. Since running the call for proposal was such a large part of the time that I spent here, I thought just giving a brief overview of what steps that entailed would be helpful. When we talk about data, I think it's also really helpful to just look at the final outcomes and put it in terms of numbers. That helps us visualize the impact that we can have. So in terms of internal CAI participation, which refers to everyone who participated in the scoping and review process through the call, we had 29 members, excluding the partnership development teams. And by the end of the call, we have approved 13 proposals across 8 different colleges at the university. And given that some of them are series and developments, we now have a total of 34 courses in the development pipeline, which is a crazy amount if you actually think of it, because 34 courses is almost 2 to 3 years worth of the courses that you take during college. And that framing it that way just shows the impact that online learning can have in making education and high quality education accessible across the globe. And I think that's a remarkable story to be a part of. Going forward, the idea was really to use data and insights that we have collected to understand how we can make this process better, faster, and even more efficient. And so it really comes down to the idea of making sure there's transparency in terms of our intentions, in terms of where we are, so what we have achieved and what we want to achieve. Because I think that gives everyone the clarity of what we're looking for and the best case scenario, and work towards that in a more directed approach. And as I've alluded to previously, it's really using data to move forward. And some of the ideas and how that can be applied is continued trend analysis. So we continue to look at what is the most relevant and in-demand knowledge areas, and then maybe cater position our theme that way, or faculty innovator surveys when we're looking at marketing and outreach efforts to see why are faculty even interested in creating a MOOC. And based on those underlying motivations, we can know how best to approach them and have a more targeted plan when it comes to marketing. The next part of my work here at CAI really involved a lot of industry research, which to frame industry research, I think there's a lot of benefit for CAI as a whole, because it tells us not only what content is in demand, but what type of languages of learning, how are they being expressed, what are the innovations that are happening when it comes to online learning spaces, how are different platforms, even those beyond just other higher educational institutions, approaching online learning and delivery. And then there's a lot of benefit for the partnership development team in particular, because there are boundless partnerships opportunities out there. And so the idea is, how do we find the best ones and the ones that best fit what is happening in the market? The primary trends, and this comes as no surprises, of course, centered towards professional development skills, both qualitative and quantitative. So you're looking at technology. How do you apply technology and use that to create things, but also how to be a better team person, how to lead, how to manage, soft skills that have become increasingly important in a growingly digitally connected world. And this comes with this push for upskilling and continuing education, as people want to be prepared for whatever comes next and want to have that flexibility to explore. Over the past few months, I've worked on a bunch of different landscapes, from public policy to mindfulness to just a general competitiveness landscape, to even exploring different formats of spreading information. And it's just shown that the sky's the limit, really, that online learning does not have to be just MOOCs or traditional courses, but it can really take so many different forms, and that's what's kind of amazing. While running these industry landscapes, things that I kept in mind were engagement metrics. So what are the number of enrollments? What are the average ratings? Help gauge the popularity and the demand for a certain theme or a certain subject. Similarly, logistics metrics, which helps PDev in planning when we're working with faculty innovators or organizations to say how would a series of course looks like. And then, of course, understanding what are the different objectives and how are different organizations approaching their online learning spaces. To conclude, when we talk about a year of transformation, it's also a year of reflection and a year of saying, okay, let's take a minute to understand what's really going on here and then take decisions that put us in the best position to excel. So how do we look at data and look at both the quantitative and qualitative sides of data to help us with a larger goal, which is to make high quality learning accessible across the globe? And that's what I think we have been trying to do at every stage. So even if it's internal data collection or industry research or just talking to people, it's going beyond just having a number of data points, but it's understanding how do we use those data points? How do we take those insights, represent them, share them, and put them into practice?